What is going on, everyone? My name is Carlos, and today we're going to be going over what the differences are between CarPlay, Android Auto, and your Hyundai software system. But before we do that, let's pour one out to Fisker Ocean, where they focus too much on the taco trays and not enough on the car. So RIP Fisker Ocean. Say RIP Fisker Ocean. Alright, so if you own an Ioniq 5 from 2022 to 2024, this looks familiar. Well, in the refreshed version of the 2025 Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 5N and the Kona EV, they are going to have software called CCNC, CCNC. And that software is going to have updates. Now, there's going to be a big difference between their software and our software. Our software is considered Gen 5, and it's a little bit older. We're not going to get as fancy pants stuff as the CCNC. So what exactly is the biggest differences? Alright, so let's go over the main differences between Gen 5 and CCNC. As I stated earlier, CCNC is only going to be for the 2025 Ioniq 5, Ioniq 5N, the Kona EV, and it is currently available for the Kia EV9. Now, the biggest difference you're going to see is the redesign of the whole software. It looks nicer, more modern, easier to read, and then you are going to notice that it is going to have OTA updates, over-the-air updates, and I'm not talking about like just for maps. I'm talking about for pretty much anything within the car. For example, if we had CCNC, we wouldn't have to drive to the dealership to get the brake light update that we had recently. Well, I guess not too recently. I think that was like a year ago, but still, we wouldn't have to do that. We could just update our cars. And that's basically where CNC comes from. We can do all the updates within the car itself. You don't have to bring it to the dealership. On top of that, the infamous wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, that is with CCNC. That is not for Gen 5, which is what we have. And on top of all of that, you have a lot more customization options. You can change the color for the icons, add your favorite sport team. You can do a lot of customization, and it will have third-party apps, a lot of streaming platforms like Netflix and others. So CCNC is like your modern day, I guess, software for the car of the future, basically. Like, that's what they're sticking with for now on. Now, that might feel like a punch in the gut for some of you, but I wouldn't worry too much. Hyundai is still supporting Gen 5 cars. We are still going to get some updates. As I said in my previous video, we are definitely going to get a summer update and a winter update, so I'm not too worried about it. I don't know what it's going to include. I doubt it's going to have all these cool features, but it should have some newer features. And again, I'm not worried. They're still going to be supporting a lot of Gen 5 cars even in the future. CCNC is just the newer platform, and then that's that. I mean, that's technology in general. You can buy a new laptop today, and in 2 years there's going to be a better one. Same with phones, same with pretty much anything you buy in general when it comes to technology. So don't think about it too much. I still love my car. It does exactly what I needed to do. I love the look of it, and I'm excited to see what kind of future updates we get for Gen 5. Speaking of software, let's see what Gen 5 software offers us at the moment. I know things can change, updates can happen, but as of today, let's see what we can do with just our plain Hyundai software, not using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started with this. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with your software on your car, but I made a pros and cons list just to kind of go over real quick. So number one, I love that you can rearrange the icons. It's not super customizable, but at least you can do that, and that makes me happy because, if there's things that I want to grab easier, I can definitely just move the icons to the left-hand side, and that way I can touch it quickly. That's what she said. And then I definitely love the radio app. I know I might sound old school. I do listen to the radio from time to time. But yeah, I love the radio app. I think it's gone through some variations, and I think the way it is now is perfect. I can customize my favorites. I can look up different radio stations really easily. So I really love the radio app. Speaking of radio, or speaking of music, you have plenty of options. If you're old school and you have a USB stick with music on it, go ahead and plug that thing in. It will work. You can listen to music that way. You can plug in your phone, obviously, with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And then if you don't want to plug in your phone, you can just pair it with Bluetooth. So you have so many options for listening to music. I think that's a huge benefit. Then they do have the sounds of nature. So if you do want to meditate, I have done this before. I have turned on sounds of nature. It is relaxing, calming, had a long day, want to take a quick nap, anything like that. Sounds of Nature is actually a really great app to use, already built in. But the biggest benefit of using Hyundai's Gen 5 software is all the OEM benefits. So you can definitely control the AC, control the heated seats, precondition the car, and then within the maps, you do have options to look at the different stalls, like for example, Electrify America tell you, hey, there's 2 available, 1 unavailable, 1 out of use or whatever, so it definitely helps you a lot there, and you can plan out your trips a lot better on the maps itself. So that is one benefit. So that's pretty much all I have written down. As far as the cons go, menus are definitely really messy. There are hidden menus all around, like you have to really dig deep for certain things. Maps are awful to control. I think maps are decent to use, like as far as giving you directions, but like just like scrolling around and trying to figure things out, it's a big pain. It's a ginormous pain point. And yeah, it's not simple. It's not easy. It's not easy on the eyes. In fact, most of this stuff on the screen is not easy to look at. It's just doesn't really have any personality. It's like dull, and then on top of that, the hidden menus and the UI and the UX, all of it's just kind of all over the place. It definitely feels like they were just trying to work with what they had the best they can, instead of starting fresh with, for example, CCNC. The 2 things I do want to take note is, number 1, it has a voice recorder for some reason. The voice memos, you can record voice memos. So let me turn down the AC so you can hear this. Captain's log. I have landed on a planet called Earth, and I don't know what scenario you'll need to do this, but I guess it's here if you need it. So yeah, that was a voice recorder or voice memo. I'm not sure what scenario you'll ever have to do that. I've also noticed with CCNC they kept that in, so I guess it's very popular. Maybe it's popular in Korea, but yeah, that's basically it. The last note I wanted to make, that Hyundai does have an assistant built into this software. It's very basic, and for some reason it knows certain things but doesn't know anything at the same time. Like for example, you can't ask it who the president is because it doesn't know, but if you ask it about sports, it'll know that. So it's kind of like weird, where it's like up to date but not really familiar with everything. And you can do cool things like control your air conditioning and stuff like that, but it's just kind of it's like a halfway effort, where they built an AI but then kind of just didn't go all the way through with it. They're like, all right, this is more or less like voice commands and that's it. It's very bizarre. And then if you ask it a question or tell it a command that it doesn't know how to do it, instead of saying I can't do it, or I don't know how to do that, it just keeps saying that it didn't understand you or couldn't hear you, which is false, because you can see below the text it'll say like exactly what you said. So it knows what you're saying, but because it doesn't know what to do, it just says it can't hear you. It's really, really bizarre, but other than that, it works great if you want to use it. Set the temperature to 69.
Setting the temperature to 69 degrees Fahrenheit.
When is the next Steelers game?
The Pittsburgh Steelers are playing the Atlanta Falcons Sunday, September 8th at 1 p.m.
Open the charging door.
Opening the charging port door.
So it's really instant, like really fast. Close the charging door.
Closing the charging port door.
All right, so let's talk about CarPlay real quick. So as you can tell, just looking at the screen, everything is large, it has colors, it has personality, and if you're familiar with the iPhone, then everything looks normal. Like, this literally looks like just a giant iPhone. And I think that's probably the best part about CarPlay, is that it literally just feels like your iPhone. The design, the customization as far as like where you want the icons, you can't do it through the touchscreen itself. You actually have to go through the app in the settings of CarPlay to do it. Something I've noticed is that it doesn't tell you that. Like, CarPlay doesn't tell you, hey, you have to customize it through the app. And Android Auto does tell you that. So I don't know. I think that's like kind of a weird thing. I would think Apple could tell you that, right? So the other thing is, if you use Apple Music, there is a QR code that your friends can scan if you have friends, and they can play something that's coming up next or whatever they want to listen to. There are lots of third-party apps, including Domino's for some reason, and Siri is Siri. So those are basically the pros. As far as the cons go, you have to keep your phone plugged in at all times. There aren't that many third-party apps, and you can't control anything within the car OEM. You can't control the temperature, you can't control the preconditioning. All right, so Android Auto is actually a little bit more interesting. So basically, same benefits with Apple CarPlay. If you're familiar with Android devices, it will look a little bit familiar as well. You have more personality, more customization, third-party apps, all the good stuff. However, and this is like very interesting, you have like mini games on Android Auto, and yeah, they're very, very basic. Like, they're like flash games, right? But you still have the option to play them. On top of that, you can actually root your phone and get different streaming apps mirror your phone. So if you're like watching YouTube or Netflix or whatever, it'll show up on the screen. So you have actually some flexibility to use Android Auto to your liking, which is very interesting compared to like Apple, but in general, right? So like, if these companies know people are doing this, why don't they just add like a way to just stream apps, right? I mean, if everybody's already gonna start rooting their phone to have all this free access, then why not just give it to the consumer? But that's not the only interesting part. There's settings within Android Auto for EV specifically, and I thought that was very interesting because you don't really have that within Apple CarPlay. You do have some EV settings if you dig deep into like Apple Maps. So in conclusion, they all work fine. Apple CarPlay is very similar to Android Auto. I think where Android Auto really shines is just more options. So for example, those little mini games, I know they're dumb, but that is an option of entertainment for you when you plug in your Android phone. I know rooting your phone isn't quote unquote normal, but it is an option if you want to watch YouTube or Netflix or whatever you want to do. So you definitely have a little more flexibility with Android Auto. And again, the settings impress me the most, because within the settings you see all these options for EVs, you see this option for personalization, but leading you to go to your phone to kind of customize it first. Whereas Apple doesn't really tell you that. You just kind of have to find out for yourself and dig through the menus. But again, I think they're both very good options, and even using the Hyundai software is a great option. However, if you use that nonstop with no other Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, I respect you, because I don't think I could do that. I really enjoy CarPlay. That's my preference, just because I own the iPhone and I've been familiar with the iPhone for a very long time. But yeah, that's basically it. Again, I don't think there's a ginormous difference, but there are some differences between all three. Hopefully you learned something today, and I'll keep an eye out, because I know Android 15, I believe, is coming out soon. iOS 18 is coming out soon, and like I said, we will be getting some Gen 5 updates. So I'm definitely gonna keep my eye on all of that. And yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something. If there's anything that I missed, please leave in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.